I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Inner Edison. And what I'd like you to take away from today's show is our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. And our guest today, Colt Briner. I apologize if I got that wrong. Briner.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to get the little accent in there. Let's find out his story. I'm sure he's got a lot of these along the way. His name is everything I know about him is Scrappy AF. So that tells me he's a little scrappy and that he will have issues that come up from being so scrappy. And let's find his story. And so tell us your story, Colt. Thanks for being here.
Right on. I appreciate it. Thank you. Started off in business about 25 years ago, started my own company with a product that I manufactured out of China, kind of took that through an interesting arc until that ultimately got knocked off by Oriental Trading Company. And that became a moot point pretty quick. And then I
remember that company.
Yeah. Those guys are, that's
notorious.
Hard. Yeah, they are notorious. And, you know, once you see your product is being knocked off in their catalog, it's like, oh, well, that was fun. Then, through a series of roles as a marketing executive over the last 20 years, sort of like built up my own style. Mostly I've been working with businesses that were in mid-stage startup around $10 million in revenue when I found them, and then helped to grow them up to the last one I was involved in, grow them up to unicorn status. And then they were able to create a nice exit with an IPO. So,
Colt, before you go on, explain unicorn status for people who don't understand that term.
Good call. Right on. Thank you, Ed. Unicorn status, meaning it's privately held and worth over $1 billion. So, most businesses that get to IPO are probably at or near that. But it's you run into a few different chasms to cross. I think one of the first chasms that a lot of businesses deal with is that $10 million of revenue. It's like, how do you blast past that, right? And then there's a few other challenges in growth along the way, certainly managerial, and then from a growth standpoint, from a production standpoint, scaling and all that stuff. It's fascinating to deal with businesses that are growing at that kind of speed. And lots to learn all along the way, of course, especially when you start off with younger companies trying to steal market share from long-standing incumbents with deep pockets. You've got to figure out ways to use creativity and strategy rather than dollars to capture market share from those people. And that's basically the foundation of Scrappy's philosophy.
All right. And why did you come up with Scrappy?
Scrappy AF, the
really word scrappy. You can get the AF at later. How'd you come up with Scrappy? Why would you say you're scrappy?
I'd say I'm scrappy because I'm using techniques that are a little bit off the book for the most part, and I'll add some creativity in there. Maybe push the boundaries a little bit on being, maybe potentially putting some people off just to express a personality with some vigor, right? Like, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. And people who like this are going to like this. And if you don't, that's all good. There's other people in the marketplace and you can work with them. But I like to boldly express some personality when I get out there.
Right. I mean, because scrappy is kind of an older term. A lot of people might not know it these days, what scrappy means, right? Compared to and please don't take this wrong, but our parents, our grandparents, they definitely knew what that was.
They did.
Right. And so that was a big term for them, where today it's not a big term. So it's a great thing that you have it, because not many people know it. And I assume AF stands for what it stands for.
It certainly does. Yes. I believe in marketing that starts conversations, right? And when people see the name, that I get asked a lot, I'm like, this is working perfectly.
Right. And so then when you're talking about it, it's the same thing we do, or I do in my mortgage company. I push the line as far as possible without breaking it. Right. And that's basically what Scrappy does, basically.
Exactly that. Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, I don't do anything illegal, but I push that line as far as I can without breaking it, right?
Okay.
I think other ways outside the box, just like what you're talking about. So that's why when they sent you to me and said, hey, would you want to talk to this guy? Of course I want to talk to this guy, because he sounds like somebody like me, but I just don't have the name of my company, what I do. I try to hide it.
I get you.
But you're more so you do more marketing and branding. What do you do?
Yeah, so I do help mid-stage startups really get into some significant growth and capture market share from industry incumbents. And they've got like a nascent marketing team, maybe 2 or 3 people trying to run the show. They're just keeping the wheels churning, and they haven't really had an opportunity to say, look, okay, it's time to get the big boy pants on and really go after this market in a meaningful way. So what I'll do is I'll come in, I'll do a comprehensive assessment for them, and then I'll build out a roadmap, prioritize tasks. I'll give them the budgets. I'll tell them the vendors they should probably be working with, how to position, and every tactic, strategy, best practice, executable that I can set up for them so they'll succeed. I build it into the plan and I help them execute.
All right. So when you say startups, is it just only in the tech side, or do you do anybody who's starting a company at a certain point? So that's
totally appreciate that question. I would say that my strength has been in technologies.
okay.
I've worked with mostly businesses in ed tech and healthcare technologies, mostly on the back office side of healthcare. But I have businesses in, I have a winery. I've got a couple of businesses in the cannabis space. I've got a personal coaching business. So, there's a bit of an all over the map thing, which I like because it keeps it fresh and interesting for me. But yeah, I'll admit my strengths are in technology.
I was just curious because when I'm in Modesto, California, close to the Bay Area, when I hear startup, all I think of is tech, right?
Sure.
That's all I think of. And sometimes you're in the right position for what happens in the market, like the pandemic that we went through has created a lot of companies that were on the brink of going, what am I going to do? I mean, Zoom was an example of that, right?
Sure.
They're at that point where they're like, okay, we're as far as we got. And then all of a sudden pandemic hits and they go through the roof.
The roof. Yeah, man, you're in Modesto. That's cool. I went to University Pacific.
Okay. Stockton.
Yeah.
UOP.
Yeah, and right now I'm in Santa Rosa.
Okay. So you're close. You're not far away.
Oh yeah, close by.
Yeah. No, I've been up here. I used to be in San Diego for like 20 years and then moved up here to be close to my daughter. Met my wife, got married, remarried, I should say. And then I adopted her 3 kids. And so I'm kind of stuck here in the Valley for a while. All of our kids are gone, but we're just kind of stuck here.
Sure. I get you.
Yeah. And plus, Modesto is a great place to go anywhere from. Go to, I should say, right?
Yeah, you could get to easily get to some cool places from Modesto.
Yeah. So how long you been over in Santa Rosa? I know it's not part of the podcast, so I'm just curious.
That's all good. But I've been in Santa Rosa for about 20 years. My dad actually lives in Santa Rosa here. He's got a winery based out right out of Glen Ellen, kind of right in between Napa, Sonoma sort of thing, though on the Sonoma side if we're picking teams. And it's been great. I love it here. We're right next to Annandale State Park. Take my mountain bike up there a couple times a week. It's just a beautiful spot to live.
Wow. So now you definitely know why you do a lot in tech.
Yeah, of course. A lot around here.
Right. All right. So how do you know that you're the right? So when you have a company and you have a few people in marketing like you talked about and you're growing your company, when do you know you need to bring somebody on like you?
I would say I think a lot of business leaders do have an instinct that they know that they have been getting moderate results, but they do see that they're getting outstripped by their incumbent competitors or even some other startups who came into their same space at a similar time. And they're watching them kind of move ahead, and they maybe don't understand why that's happening. They have maybe an impulse to just kind of push the gas on spending more money on the channels that they're using, but they don't know that they have really the strong strategies or that they are using the tactics that are going to get them more results out of the same amount of money. So you do have to have a bit of an instinct that it's time to look at a new way to get it done. And if that instinct has arisen for you, it might be a good time to have a conversation.
Right. All right. So you just said most of them know this. I'm telling you, the people I talked to, I mean, I'm not trying to brag, but I did a quick little 10-minute thing at one of these speakeasy talks on sales and everything. And on the way of doing that, of getting ready for it, I did okay. I hadn't been on stage in 15 years. But along the way, I realized that today people have forgotten how to sell, right? And they think it's a bad thing. So what you're saying is in marketing, these people will know that they need help. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times people are like, they're so focused in the trenches trying to build their company and trying to hire people to do certain things. They don't really know, but my background is marketing. That's my bachelor's and master's. And so I understand that, right? I've always spent a ton of money on marketing. I was going through with my bookkeeper yesterday and she's like, holy cow. And I'm like, that's what it takes in the mortgage space to get, right? Whatever you spend on marketing is basically for how we do it. So you get back, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But it's a lot. And they look at it going, wow, that's like that's exactly what it is. Because you have to market to get to people to know where you're at. So a lot of times these owners of companies, though, don't think that. They think they'd put more into technology or more
Mhm,
into
mhm.
building a better widget, when in reality, it's just getting that information out to people so they know it's there. But then if you have just the marketing working, but then you don't have the sales side of it
Sure.
working, it doesn't matter how much you spend on marketing if you don't have anybody in the sales department knows how to do sales.
Man, that is so true. And I do see a lot of business leaders who take this sort of magic bullet philosophy for marketing, right? We're going to have this killer event, or we're going to do this killer dimensional mailer campaign, or we've got this phenomenal thought leadership, or we're going to go after this great webinar and we're going to spend $30,000 to get it sponsored through like the industry aggregator or this magazine or that publisher or whatever. And yeah, you got a bunch of people there, and you can pat yourself on the back. Great event, great podcast, great webinar, great whatever it is that you did that brought the people in. But you still need 7 touches to close. I mean, as a minimum. And I think that there's this instinct that if we just crush this thing on the marketing side, that we're going to close deals, and that's just not how it's going to work, especially in a B2B context, which is sort of my area of focus. You have to have the principles, the fundamentals principles have to still be in place. You're never going to create, I don't care how awesome your marketing event was, you're not going to create something that is going to counteract the fundamentals of business and sales. You will still need to have your relationships built, your multiple touches, and follow up emails, smile and dial, all that stuff still needs to happen, even if you have some killer marketing concept.
So all right, so let's talk about that. Cause I mean, those two things are, I think, a good product is great, but unless you have amazing marketing and amazing sales, it's not going to get anywhere. Or even if you have mediocre marketing and great sales, you'll get somewhere. But the issue really is the sales department or whoever does that for you, whatever you do, they still need to know the information about your product and how to do it and how to deliver and how to deal with the client that you're talking to and how to features, benefits, whatever those numbers that works for you. Yeah. How do you deal with that and explain that through these systems when you come in? Do you have like a whole system you go, okay, I go through here? And if you do, would you mind sharing some of that?
Yeah, in some ways I do. I think first of all, just from a fundamental standpoint, or a philosophy standpoint, I really think of marketing to be in service of sales. I've definitely been on the teams. I've led the teams that have come up with marketing ideas. Let's go do this amazing thing. Yeah. Right. Like we've got this really cool idea for a video or for a dimensional mailer or something we're going to do at a conference. And that's all great. And maybe you killed it on views, likes, shares, impressions that you were doing something online. That's great. But those marketing numbers, independent of a really strong relationship between the sales team and the marketing team, aren't going to get you there. So I start these conversations with the sales team. What do you guys need? What tools do you need? Let's talk about sales support. Let's talk about where your conversations kind of fall off the radar and you're not getting responses back from the people that you're trying to talk to. Where do you need more collateral? Where do you need great video materials? And then once we figure out, all right, if I'm going to bring people into the pipeline, you've got that conversation handled. Your conversion rates went from 10% to 40% when we've got a great conversation in the pipeline. Now let's talk about filling the pipeline, but do so in a coordinated way, right? So great visibility, weekly conversations between sales and marketing. This month, this is what we're going to do, is what it's going to look like. Here's how we're going to measure it. Here's the conversion rates we expect on it. And here's how you follow up on it. Here's some language we're going to give you to follow up on it, right? So I think a lot of marketing leaders, they get resentful of sales teams. Like, you want me to just do all this stuff for you? You want me to write these things down for you? You want me to write your emails for you? You want me to write your talk tracks for you? The answer is yes.
Correct, because you know the product and you're marketing it, right?
Exactly right.
Right.
And if you were going to take like a humor angle on your next commercial, like how does that tie in? I don't understand. Spell it out, write it out, do the scripting, and then trust them to take their liberties with it, right? Because they're sharp people. They know how to have conversations, but they need the basis of that understanding. And every time where I've seen marketing get kind of over proud, like we're the people delivering the leads, get it done. It just, you create this antagonism, etc. I will say that some tension between sales and marketing is a good thing. It should be there in a healthy business, right? You're not selling it right. Come on, get this done. I'm sending you the leads, or you got to get us better leads. That conversation's every day, every place. And I think it's a healthy thing. Keep that up, but focus on being a united front between sales and marketing, and you're going to do a whole lot better than otherwise.
Yeah, that reminds me of the movie Glenn Ross.
Oh,
You
yeah.
ever see that movie?
Yes, the leads are
I mean, you
garbage.
can't be in marketing and sales and never see that movie. If you are, you need to go watch that movie, because just the first 10 minutes of it, all sarcastic and talking about the leads are weak.
Yes.
The leads aren't weak. You're weak, and then I saw somebody, talking about don't be a closer on on an Instagram feed or whatever, or Facebook, this lady, and she was saying, 67% is good, is good enough. You don't have to be the top closer. Think of yourself as a professional. I'm thinking you can't even graduate with 67%. I don't want a doctor who gets it right 67% of the time. I don't want an attorney who gets it right 67% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, or I should say fails 33% of the time. I'm like thinking, and I know this person, I'm like, you don't do a single thing at 67%. You're at like 99. You can just tell by her how she does everything and everything. So I'm thinking, don't preach something that you don't do. Tell people how can you be better from 67? Let's do this, this, and this to get you to 85. And the reason I bring this up is when I first started in my industry, we sold by the phone for 18 years. We'd send out packages prior to the electronic stuff we can do now, right? We had a FedEx, everything. I had a conversion back ratio of 89%.
Wow.
Right. That would come back. Out of that, closing ratio was 95%. And people asked me how I did that. I made sure these people knew everything about the product, what I was selling, why it was important. And I'd have them tell me what I said to them so they could understand that. We don't do that these days. Our kids don't know how to talk. They text each other. And I'm talking young adults. All they do is text. They'll sit there and text somebody for a week. They could answer that conversation in 2 minutes if they pick up the phone.
That's true.
Right. And that's what we need. And I was at Traffic and Conversion this last year, and they were like, everything old is new. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's always been here. You need to go back to the greats, listen to them how to do sales, listen how they do marketing. The only difference is all these other things that we use, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff is another form of a channel to market into. Nothing else should have changed. It's just, but a lot of, and this is my thought. If you think differently, you can tell me. Is the fact that you might have to say your message differently in each one of those channels, like you did on TV or radio or that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it's the same thing. You still need to connect emotionally like you used to do. But a lot of people forgot about that.
Do you know where that lesson started for me? I was moonlighting, I guess that's what it's called, as a professional magician for about 20 years. And I studied under Thomas Nixon. He's a master magician out of San Francisco. And I was going after, after I learned the fundamentals from him, I was online, doing YouTube. I was going to Penguin Magic. I was always interested in having a new trick, right? Like I wanted to find something cool and new and something people hadn't seen before. And, I told him about the places that I was going to learn new things, to learn the hot, cool stuff. And he said, Colt, if you want to get a new trick, go get an old book. It's like, oh, well, okay, I'll try that. So I went up and I picked up a book called Principles of Deception. And wow, I mean, this is the good stuff, right? This is the real good stuff. It's the stuff that the people who are putting stuff up on Penguin Magic and YouTube, this is where they learned what they know. And it resonates through everything that I've done professionally, right? This idea that the fundamentals, go get the old book, man. It's so true, and it just continues to apply.
Right. And I hope nobody does it so that I can keep doing it myself, right? Smarter.
Sure.
I mean, because when I was right, well, no, I mean, when I got out of the Navy, I was in sales, and I'm like, I want to do better, right? I don't want to. You should always strive to be better in life. Leave things better than you found it, outside, pick up trash. What I teach my kids the same thing. Leave wherever you are better than you found it. And that's how we should this world. And so I listened to Zig Ziglar. I listened to, all the old guys, the Tom Hopkins, everybody, back in the day. And back then, I'm sorry, it was cassettes, right? That's what it was, right? And then you had to get rid of all those because, it went to CDs, and then it went to, now we just online, Audible, everything. But it's, the problem is it's the old people, and what's funny is like Brian Tracy stole everything from Zig Ziglar, and I don't mean it wrong, stole. Yeah, that's the impression. That's what they say to do. Even my coach, Steve D. Sims, he's like, you can take everything I do and make it yours. That's not stealing. That's what I want you to do.
Yep.
And that's important, to find certain things and make it yours, change it, whatever you need to do, but go back. It's the old stuff that is really still works. It's just, you have to change it. I remember back in the 90s, I was one of the direct mail kings out of San Diego. I was one of those guys who created all this stuff where you come to your mailbox, right, for mortgages. I came up with verbiage. I came up with stuff and people would steal it. So I'd have to come up with something else. And how I knew it was stolen, because I made up those words.
Sure.
Right? Or the departments or certain things that I did. And then all of a sudden everybody else is doing it. So it's important to make those changes and go back, learn from the greats, and then make them your own. Because that's what I did when I was getting ready for my sales speak. I went back and listened to everybody, listened to the new people. And the only difference between a lot of the new people and the old people is some people that are new think that the old form of selling was manipulation or coercion, when it's not. It's persuasion.
Totally.
And what persuasion is the getting people to do what they want to do already. Right?
100%. Yes.
Yeah. They don't walk on the lot unless they're ready to buy. I'm kidding. But we have a used car place here. They don't bug you at all. You walk all over, sit in the cars, whatever. When you're ready, you walk inside, and they get complaints all the time. Nobody came out and talked to me. Yeah, they don't want to. They want you to come in when you're ready. And that's basically certain things we're doing now. Make little changes to make it your own.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm talking the whole way through, but
no, it's good. Yeah, actually, let me tell you what really resonates with me about what you were just saying, and I think this is a really important lesson that needs to go further. I think it has a little bit to do with sort of this insta-perfect world that we're in, where we only see the end product of what people produce and how famous they got and this and that. And when you dig under it, we do find, oh, they got that from this and they got that from that, right? The foundational things that they drew on, combinatorial, whatever. And now here we go. Here's the new thing. I think a lot of people are getting the wrong idea about creativity. I think a lot of people are getting the wrong idea about inventiveness. And the reality is exactly what you just said. Nothing's pure genesis. There is no such thing as pure genesis. It's always a combination of something. And it's when people kind of give themselves permission to invent and create and be creative and come up with the new by combining the old, when they say that's how it gets done, then they'll be like, oh, I can do that. Versus as they look around and they see people, quote unquote, being creative, inventing things out of the blue, which never really happens. But they go, shoot, I'm just not creative. And I say, but you are creative. You're just thinking about it in the wrong way. It's exactly what you're talking about. Take what you see, combine it in a different way. There's stuff coming out of the woodwork all the time of people making their new combinations. And that's just material for you to work with. That's what it really is. It's material for you to work with. I mean, I would say anything that you look at and you think is pure genesis, whether it's a technology or a campaign or a sales tactic, it's only because you haven't gotten under the covers and looked at the component pieces of it. iPhone is a great example, right? Steve Jobs is celebrated for creating this magnificent, well, they had all those things before. They had the phone, they had the iPod, they had the internet in your pocket thing, the PDA was all there. It's just a combination. And he admits it. He absolutely directly admits it in several different quotes. That's what's happening there. I think creativity is one of the most important and valuable things, attributes that a business team can possess these days. I believe that very strongly. And I think that we're just intimidated with the idea of what creativity means because we don't understand it.
I agree totally. And I think a lot of people are afraid to be creative because they're afraid to reach out and do things differently than everybody else and then looked at different. But you have to look, and we were talking before we came on about different podcasts I had and different people who a lot of people think was successful from day one all the way through. And it took them 15 years to get there. A lot of these companies have been around a lot longer than people think, and they've been working on things for a lot of years. And it seems like it's overnight because the first time you heard of it. Totally. Doesn't mean that. You have to put in the time. You have to build things, and it takes time. Stop trying to get rich overnight. Stop. It takes time to build things, and anything long term takes time.
It's true, but now we see it. We do believe it's happening so fast. So when we don't see that we got there in 6 months. There's that give up culture going on right now, right? Because everything looks like it is insta perfect and none of it is, but we're not doing a good job as a culture. And I think this is really important. If we want to mentor the next group coming behind us, share those failures, share those challenges, right? Share where you have stepped in the wrong pile, right? And let us see that, oh, okay. So I know I'm not perfect, and actually neither is that person, and I can still be just like they are if I stay on that same path. We are doing a terrible job of creating visibility for our failures and our setbacks and that type of thing. We need to create more visibility for that.
That's why I do Inner Edison.
I know it.
Right. And that's because there's two things that I like what he said. Basically, our greatest, he didn't say this, but our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. That's what we came up with. But his quote was the fact that most people quit right before they become successful. And that's what a lot of people do. So you have to keep working on this and growing. But speaking of defeats and your Edison moments, did you have one you wanted to share?
Yeah, it's actually a collection, but they're all in the same theme.
Is it a book? I'm just kidding.
Nah, not yet. What it is, I used to really just have this sense that passionately evangelizing an idea was going to get it to happen. And it was really just up to me to put enough passion and excite people and to, Tony Robbins the hell out of this thing in order to get the business to say, yeah, that's what we'll do. Right. And as I got better at that evangelizing capacity, I would see like 30% of the audience or the team or the business got behind it, and then 40 and then 50. But there actually came a point where it leveled off, right? That you could get so much of an organization behind you. You could get so much of an audience. You could get so much. And I finally figured out what was happening. What you have when you're really trying to get an idea off the ground, you're trying to get a business off the ground, trying to get an initiative off the ground, you want to spend some money in an organization, whatever it is. In order for that to really succeed, you need to enroll every one of the personalities that exists on what's called the adoption spectrum, right? So this is the diffusion of innovation curve. We've seen this 100 times. It starts with the innovators, early adopters, mid-stage adopters, late adopters, and then what are sometimes called the laggards, but are often also called the institutionalists. And I used to think the institutionalists were just people who didn't freaking get it. You just don't get it. This is a really exciting thing. We should absolutely be doing this. But they would create the friction, right? They would be skeptical, right? They'd want a whole lot more to it. And I had this mentality that it was just my peers, quote unquote, my peers, the innovators and the early adopters are people who just get how stuff works. And you guys keep doing what you're doing over there. You're never going to get. But the reality is, if you want an idea, whether it's to go widespread in the marketplace, to succeed in a business, to change the direction of a department, you need to enroll these people, not resist these people. Because if they own the institutions, they will be the final step to widespread adoption for whatever it is that you're trying to do. So you need to be able to speak their language as well. And this is a major, major lesson for me. It's not just about being inspiring and getting people motivated and passionate. It's, well, have you figured out how this is going to work from a budgetary standpoint? Have you figured out who's going to be responsible for what and how you're going to measure it? Do you know what the time boxes are and what success is going to look like? Can you communicate how this rolls up to the top line of the business and their charter as an organization? Because until you can really expand yourself across the full spectrum of those disciplines, you are never going to get 100% enrollment on anything. It's not necessary to get 100% enrollment when you want to move an idea forward, but the closer that you get, the faster and further you will go with it.
I totally agree.
Right on.
I mean, it's I don't want to say, because basically if you try fight things all along the way, you probably aren't explaining it right, or you haven't done it right yourself. Look in, we're always pointing the finger elsewhere. Right. Look inside before you start pointing that finger, because it could be just something, making little changes on how you're doing it, how you explain it, a little few things to make a difference. And that can make the huge difference in getting your idea across to other people.
Totally. It does. Yeah, it really does. And it's like I now have come to the point where I really value these institutionalists, right? The people who are the late adopters. They're very skeptical. If you think about, like, if we didn't have institutionalists, the people keeping things the way that they are, we would be in a really challenging situation. An example might be, so you have the banking sector, right? Our major financial institutions. Maybe cryptocurrency is a really strong idea, but if all of a sudden they all just went, yeah, let's all do that right now, we would be in a chaos. Even if it's a really great idea, for these guys to wait what might end up being multiple decades before we see finally the institutional shift toward that direction, that's a good thing. That's keeping us safe as a system, right? And that same safety exists whether it's on a national scale, like I'm talking with, national banking, or inside a business, or even inside a small team. All that stuff applies.
I think the biggest problem why they're not going to adopt it like a lot of people want them to is because the dollar is what people use to buy oil, right?
Yeah.
So if we get rid of the dollar as an entity like that, then our dollar isn't needed as much. It's not going to be as strong as much. So those institutions are fighting it to keep us strong. Because I have a friend of mine who's in the financial planning industry, and he says his biggest fear is the adoption fully of Bitcoin because of our dollar. Then all of a sudden becomes not needed in the world, and it really affects everything.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah. So I could see, so I understand. So there could be reasons why people didn't adopt it. It has nothing to do with your product or what you want. It's their idea in their head, just like I said, that could be stopping them because they're afraid of this to happen. Well, if you could show to them, hey, that's not going to happen, because what we're going to do is they're still going to want to do it in dollars because it's such a volatile currency over here. And then they go, oh, okay. You know what I mean? So you would just have to make sure that you're explaining things as well as you possibly can.
Yeah. And people with those fears and concerns, valuable people, and their concerns equally so. Can you speak to them?
Right. My institutionalists are the people who want slow growth in my industry.
Tell me about that. What do you mean?
So they don't want housing built. They want slow growth on housing. Oh,
yeah, sure.
Right. And now we're 5 million short on homes right now, and they want slow growth. How much more expensive do you want these homes to where people can't afford them? That's why we have people leaving California. And I'm not on the whole that we have a huge exodus. We're losing a net 100,000, but most of those people are making between $50,000 and $100,000 a year, so they can't afford to buy a house here. So they have to move somewhere else. And then you have the retirees who are like, I don't want to stay here and pay my taxes for my retirement here. I'm going to go somewhere else where it's cheaper. So but it's not the people in the middle. There are some big tech people who have, but it's most of the time you just have to look at, we got 40 million people here in California. And if we only have a net exodus of 100,000, it's going to take a very long time to lose people.
Yeah, absolutely will.
Right. Because I have people coming back already that I know.
Oh yeah. Coming back from where?
All over Texas, Tennessee, because they're like, it's hot and humid. There's bugs that bite. You can't get off the porch. You have to have a screened porch, where we don't have those issues here, right? So, yeah. Anyway, enough about my industry. Anything else you want to add before we go today, Colt?
Yeah, I think there'd be one other topic to just touch on quickly, which is being purpose-driven as a business. The way I see it these days, any individual has access to enough knowledge and talent and production capabilities and audience and capital to basically start any business that they want. And especially with the Great Resignation, whatever is going on there, businesses having trouble finding talent. If I could start my own business doing what lights me up tomorrow with the access to the tools that I have, well, I can be aligned with purpose that fast. So the question is, if a business isn't also giving me isn't giving me just an income, but also isn't giving me purpose, why would I go that route? I think that into the 2020s, purpose and being purpose-driven, genuinely like operationalized purpose-driven, not some platitude on the wall or some slogan that you put out on your marketing, but genuinely purpose-driven is going to be a critical factor that defines major swaths of winners and losers into this decade. Yeah.
My question is all right, so purpose driven. What do you mean by purpose driven?
I think
your definition of that is what I'm trying to get at, because we all have different definitions of purpose is and what our purpose or what our success is. What is the definition you're using on that?
Yeah, this is a great question. And rather than create my own material on this, since we were talking about borrowing from others, I would say Simon Sinek has actually done most of the good work on helping people understand what it means to start with the why. But I can give you an illustrative example. It seemed to me that what was happening between Blockbuster and Netflix creates a good example for this, where Blockbuster, since so much of their money was coming from late fees, seemed to think that they were in the DVD rental business, right?
Right.
But the reality was they were in the movies at home business, right? They're trying to provide families with a convenient way to watch movies at home. It was like, that made sense. But when you misalign your business and just in terms of how you operate, how you incentivize people internally, why you promote people, everything that you're doing, when you misalign it, right? When you're off target from your purpose, you are much more disruptible. It's much harder to attract and retain talent. It's much harder to attract and retain clients. And in the case of Blockbuster, if they had recognized that they were in the delivering family entertainment business, they would have been much more likely to have been protected against the kind of disruption that Netflix brought. Same thing, I think of like Toro Mower, right? Toro Mower, they sell these motorized landscaping equipment. What they're really selling is beautiful landscape, right? This is the place where I go and relax and enjoy. As long as you keep track of what your purpose is, you're not in the lawnmower selling business, you're in the sanctuary in the back of my house business, then you can maintain that defensibility, that attractiveness to employees, and that attractiveness to market. And again, I think this is a critical area to focus on in the 2020s.
So basically, just keep looking at that you're actually going, what is your mission statement? Basically going to the right place, right?
That's right.
So, all right. Gotcha. Because I mean, that's important to know that, because things change and you have to be able to change with the way things are going.
You do. Yeah. Stay on mission and you can continue to change. If you decide you're in some specific, like I manufacture this widget, you are going to be in trouble.
Right. And I totally agree on that. So I think that's a great place to stop right there.
Right on.
Colt, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to thank everybody who's listening. And if you enjoy what we're doing here, please just share and follow for more. And again, thank you so much for being here, Colt, and have a great day.